Morning, Lighthouse. Did you read First Corinthians 13 already? Man, just go back and read First Corinthians 13 and then read it again and then just read it. We have the chance to consider some of the most beautiful words ever written today. Not only was the Apostle Paul the great theological teacher or preacher and also a very practical teacher, but he's also just a great writer. Like, this is so beautiful. We might stop and think these familiar words about love being patient and kind. Let's think about how to think about these. The first way that maybe we can think about it, probably the primary way, because it's certainly the way Paul wants to think about it, is Paul has just finished a discussion on spiritual gifts. He's just finished a discussion on how we all fit together as members of the same body. And like I said yesterday, this is some disputed territory. People, argue about the supremacy of some of the gifts. People argue about whether or not these gifts are still around. People argue about all kinds of stuff. And people want to take a spiritual gifts test, which is fine. If you've taken a spiritual gifts test, that's okay. But people want to identify as this or that. And well, I'm called to this and I'm not called to this other thing. And at the very end of chapter 12, Paul says, look, now that I've explained that, let me show you a more excellent way. Instead of deciding what your spiritual gift is and only functioning in that, or deciding whether or not your spiritual gift is how it relates to other people's spiritual gift and figuring out how all of the body works together. It's true in a physical body too. We're doing a lot better if we're not thinking about how my elbow works. We're just throwing, And Paul says, look, now that I've explained all that, let me show you a more excellent way. Guys, love, simple love. Do you remember what love means? It's profound. It means not getting your way, but rather making sure other people are served before you. It means laying down your rights. It means laying down your life. It means considering other people as more important than you. And Paul says, look, that is the more excellent way. You can either study, get bent out of shape over what spiritual gifts you have and what spiritual gifts they have and what spiritual gifts are legitimate. Or you can just go love each other. Paul starts this passage by saying, look, if I speak in the tongues of angels, of men and of angels, which probably he did. Probably he spoke in tongues. They called that the language of the angels. And certainly he spoke in the tongues of men. He was a profound preacher, profound prophet. But he says, if I was the best at those, but I didn't love my fellow man, if I had not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. Check that out, guys. If we are the best preachers in the world, if we have all of our theology perfect, not only that, but we have this language to communicate with God that is just beautiful, but we don't love people, we are obnoxious. Have you ever walked into Guitar Center when there was a kid who just is learning to play the drums, just hitting cymbals right and left? You got to get out of there. It's just obnoxious. You can't think in there. That's how we sound. If we have the best language of God, but don't love people. Love is supreme. Love is how we demonstrate what God is like. So Paul says, the more excellent way is just to love each other. If I have prophetic powers, certainly he did, and I understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but I have not love, I am nothing. Guys, write all the books you want. Get all the degrees you want. Align with one theological camp or whatever. Man, if you don't have love, practical, outworking, spirit-filled, laying down your life for your neighbor, Paul says you're nothing. We can look at this as the most excellent way. The second way we can look at this is the way humanity was supposed to be and the way humanity is going to be. This is what Adam and Eve were like before the fall, and this is what we are going to be like in the new heaven and new earth. In eternity, you are not going to care about your ego, your advancement, your pride. It's just going to be gone. Might as well get rid of it now. Might as well practice selflessness, community, connection, love, worship. Might as well do that now, because that is what we're going to do for all of eternity. So you can look at this as a foretaste. Paul is giving us a picture of what you and I are actually going to be like in eternity future. You can also look at this as a perfect description of Jesus. This is what Jesus was like: patient and kind, never rude, does not insist on its own way. And isn't that interesting? Jesus definitely insisted on truth, but didn't insist on his own way. I think that's right, that there was an absolute unwavering amount of truth. He is truth. And yet, God is love. He was 100% self-sacrificing for you and me. We could also look at this, and this isn't especially profound. You've heard this before, but you can look at this as the goal for your life. Now, I've said it before. You've heard me say it before, but I wonder if we just had this passage someplace where we could see it, and just see if you could insert your name instead of the word love. Grant is patient and kind. Not always, but that's a goal. That's maturity in Christ. The most mature Grant is going to be patient and kind. Grant does not envy or boast. Grant is not arrogant or rude. Grant does not insist on his own way, is not irritable or resentful, does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Man, I have some room to grow. And I wonder if we read this passage today, we could be at once overwhelmed with the beauty of the description of Jesus here. We could be impressed and inspired by this being the most excellent way. Instead of figuring out what your spiritual gift is and how you have to use it and all that, why don't you just go love people and let God worry about empowering you? Or we can look at this and really be challenged and say, what my dream is to be a lot like I am on earth in heaven. I don't want to get to heaven. I don't want to be reigning with Christ in the new heaven and new earth and be a whole lot different than I am now. Rather, I want my maturity now to grow and grow and grow to the point where, I'm a lot like the me that I was really designed to be and the me that I will someday be. So here's the goal for your whole life. Be patient and kind. Don't insist on your own way. And don't be irritable. Don't be resentful. Don't rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoice with the truth. Bear everything. Believe all things. Hope in all things. Endure all things. Because Paul says, look, prophecy, they will all pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. Why will those things cease? Well, because we're not going to have any need for those in heaven. We're not going to get to heaven and need preachers. We're not going to get to heaven and need speaking in tongues. We're not going to get to heaven and need a word of knowledge or wisdom. It'll all be gone. We'll see Christ face to face. But what will remain is love. In fact, maybe the most popular, famous verse in 1 Corinthians is, so now faith, hope, and love abide, these three. That's where you should live, is in faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Again, we won't need faith in heaven. We won't need hope in heaven. There'll be a reality. But we still will participate in, be defined by, and need every day love. So why don't you make your goal living a life that looks a lot like your life's going to be when you get to glory? Hey, be loved and go love somebody.